Good morning, thriving warriors, or those who wish they were. Who are wondering what that means. Today is Sunday, September 10th, 2023. Here we are in Pahrump. It is 6:18 in the morning, a little bit of a late start, only because I was out late with Leo Blundo at his restaurant with some people, some very interesting, good people. Former professional basketball player and football player from Vanderbilt. So I did not get back till late. And I think according to my Fitbit, I fell asleep at 11:40. So a little bit late this morning, but here we are ready to go on a Sunday, the day the Lord has made. It's also an important day for me. It's the most important day of the year for me because it's my birthday. Yes, I'm only 65. I know I look much older than that, but that's how it is. So today's podcast is going to be a little bit different. Well, actually a lot different, because we're not going to go through the typical 5 steps that we do on this podcast. We're going to talk about one of the 4 parts of our transformational program. And you might know what that is because it's in the heading of this, for non-believers. And so I already know, what is this guy doing? He's not qualified. True. But so our normal approach to the daily podcast is 5 steps. Prepare for the day, attitude of gratitude, write down and think about the things we are appreciating that we have right now, review the day before, highs and lows, where we exceeded expectations, where we fell short, where we might need to rebound, 1 John 1:9, plan the day, and then project into the day. So that's the normal routine that we have. So now I got that out of the way. And again, this is a 4-part transformational program: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So we normally touch lightly on each of those 4, and we use the metaphor of your life is a journey across the waters. Could be ocean, could be sea, whatever it is. It's a journey that lasts until you stop, until you're done. And everybody's going to be on the journey, and you need to have a boat to experience that journey in. And so we help you build the boat, focusing on the key parts of the boat: the sails, the rudder system, the steering system, the below deck, and the hull. And the idea is, if all 4 of those do not work, you cannot have the best possible journey. You need to have good sails, you need to have a good rudder, you need to have a below deck where you can go when it's hot or cold or wet or dry, to get you out of the elements so you can rest, recuperate, recharge. And then the hull of the boat is vital, because if that is breached, you got real problems. Whereas the sails get torn, the mast falls down, it's going to be pretty unpleasant, but you can creep along. If the rudder breaks, you're going to be rudderless and you're going to be subject to the wind and the currents, but at least you're going to be moving forward. If your below deck is not very good, small, cramped, wet, musty, rat infested, whatever it is, it's going to be unpleasant, but it's better than being out on the deck 24/7. But if your hull is breached, you got a problem, a serious problem. So the parts match up to the sails are the physical fitness and health. You have to be physically fit and healthy. The rudder, the steering mechanism, is like the mental learning. You need to be able to learn. The below deck is the emotional part, and the hull is the spiritual part. So I'm only going to talk about the spiritual part. We're 5 minutes in, and our program is not designed for people who are believers. That is not our mission. I'm not here to preach to the choir. Other people are qualified to do that. And I'm not saying better qualified, I'm saying qualified, implying I'm not qualified really to do that. And frankly, I don't really have much interest in preaching to the choir. That is not my aspiration. I do not want to be a pastor, teacher, and evangelist, or anything like that. I self-identify as a teacher of hard skills, primarily hard skills teaching, helping people. It's not really teaching. I got to retract that. Helping people learn, helping people become autodidactic is what I'm interested in. And so I am interested in the non-believers. And as I'm going to 7 different Christian experiences per week, I have for many, many months now, well, not 7, but more than 3 a week for several months, I am struck by the same things that people who are believers, they just don't get why people are non-believers. So let's go to some facts. So let's do some fact checking. Let's say there's 7.2 billion people in the world. There's actually more than that, but let's just, for simple numbers, let's say there's 7.2 billion people in the world. As Carl Sagan would say, 7.2 billion people. Okay. There are 2.4 million, roughly a third of the people in the world identify as Christians. There are more Catholics, people who identify as Catholic in the world, than all Protestant religions, all other Christian groups, sects combined. Okay, according to, I think it's Wikipedia, there's 1.3 billion Roman Catholics, and there's 1.1 billion all other Christians. So a third of the world is Christian. Almost a third of the world, 1.9 billion, are Abrahamic religions, Islam, are Islamic, and it's catching, it's growing. So there are more Muslims than there are Catholics, but there's a couple different flavors of Muslim too. However, there could be more of a particular flavor of Muslim, I don't know if it's Shia or Sunni, than there are Catholic. 1.2 billion Hindus, 500 million Buddhists, 0.4 folk religion. Okay, so in the world, a third of the people identify as Christian, and more than half of those are Catholic. So that means half, the non-Catholic part, considers the Catholic part to not actually be Christian. They're probably not saved. At least the Protestants I talk to almost universally believe Catholics are really not saved because anyway. Okay, now, of the other half, of the other 1.1 billion Protestants, probably 1/4 says the other 3/4 aren't really good Christians. Maybe they're saved, maybe they're not saved. There's not really consensus on when you're saved, when you're not saved. One of the great questions among Protestants is to have a discussion of universal salvation. Are you universally saved or not? So yesterday 2 days ago, I heard somebody in a position of authority basically say, once saved, always saved, but not the Pope or Catholics. The Pope is not saved. But If you are a pedophile mass murderer and you believe that Jesus is your Savior, Lord and Savior, you're saved, but the Pope is not saved. So my point isn't whether they're saved or not. The point is a lot of the 1.1 billion Christians think the other part of the 1.1 billion Christians aren't really saved. So it probably works out that in the world, there's 100 million people out of 7.2 billion who believe they are actually the ones that have the truth, that they know the truth. Okay, cool. That's great. I don't have any argument or any discussion about that. I'm interested in the other 7.1 billion people. Okay, that's who I'm interested in. The other 7.1 billion people, in fact, is probably the many, 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 many millions of Americans who are non-believers. So my interest is not singing to the choir, preaching to the choir. That's not my interest at all. And so the question is, why are people non-believers? That's not really the question, but that's kind of the starting point. Well, how come they're non-believers? And it sort of matters that they're non-believers, but what I can tell you doesn't really work is to talk to non-believers in a language they don't understand. So repeating things like John 3:16, John 14:6, proof, here's proof. John 3:16, here's proof. John 14:6, here's proof. See, here's proof. Well, for a non-believer, that isn't proof. That is not proof. Saying the Bible is proof that the Bible is true doesn't mean anything to a non-believer, or it doesn't mean anything. Let me say it this way. It means very little to a non-believer to say the Bible is proof that the Bible is true. To say that dinosaurs did not exist 60 million years ago, to have that discussion with somebody who's a non-believer that's educated, is a non-starter. It's a non-starter. But I think there is a way to get there. And I think it is consistent with the scriptures. And so, with some of the local churches here, hopefully by the end of the year, it will be most of the Christian churches here. And yes, I know there are some Christians who will say, well, they're not really Christian. Okay, again, not preaching to the choir. But getting the people who believe they are Christians to help get the non-believers to become believers. But it's not through preaching. It's not through saying, see, it's here in the Bible. Well, some maniac out there on a Sunday morning. Okay, so it's not by saying to non-believers, see, it says so here, it's true. It's not by saying, just come to church, come with me. Because they might go with you, they might obediently follow, but in their hearts, the people I'm interested in are the ones that do not believe. And I think there is a way to get there. And so with some churches, we are going after the homeless problem here in Pahrump, which if you ask the people who say there's a homeless problem, yes, rock and roll quotes, if you ask them how many homeless there are, they'll give you a number that's less than 200. Well, out of 30,000 people, and there's more than 30,000 people, the estimate's probably closer to 40,000, but if out of 30,000 people you have 200 people that are homeless, that's not a problem. That's an opportunity. That's an opportunity for the churches to get together to solve that problem. And so that's what we're doing. And I will say that, what is my interest with the non-believers? Well, my interest with the non-believers is to have them become active Christians. Not Christians, active Christians, which means they have active participation in a local church. And to be an active, so what does it mean to be a Christian? So an active Christian is a Christian who's actively involved in a local church. What does it mean to be a Christian? Well, for most Christians, the bar is very low. All you have to do is believe that Jesus is your Savior. Once saved, always saved. So the bar is really, really low to get people to become Christians. It's so low that it's kind of humorously low. And I think it's so low that people who are non-believers think, well, I don't believe that it's as simple as believing Jesus was the Messiah and my personal Lord and Savior, and he died for my sins. It's so low that typical believers don't believe it. But I'm kind of more on the end of the spectrum. And I believe if you really look at Paul, and I don't remember the Bible quote, but he says something like, you can have this tremendous amount of faith to move mountains, but if you don't have love, it doesn't get you anything. So I'm on the end of the spectrum that it's not faith and faith alone. It is love, and love is not an emotion. More on that later because we're 17 minutes in, but so let me wrap up. Let me conclude and summarize by saying the most important part of the journey is your spiritual journey. The most important part of the spiritual journey is to believe that Jesus is your Lord and Savior. But I think it takes more than a simple belief. And I'm not saying works, okay, for the people who are ready to fact check me, I'm not saying it is works. I am on the end of the spectrum and will be focusing more on this about where Paul says, without love, something about, but without love, if I have not loved, it doesn't matter, whatever. And then look at James, where he's talking about faith and faith alone, because I think I remember something about, actually at the end of that, he says something slightly different about faith and faith alone. So to conclude, spiritual part is the most important part about having a successful life. Being an active Christian is the most important part of having a good spiritual Christian life. And so that is what the mission is here, working with the local churches to get to the people who need help the most in a spirit of love, which we'll call kinship, to help them have a better life. So the idea is the greatest gift that we have is the gift of life from God. Our life is the greatest gift we have. Today's my birthday, so I can really appreciate that. The anniversary of my birth, the 66th anniversary of my birth. So that's the greatest gift I have received. And my gift back to God is how I live my life. And I think if everybody did that, if everybody had that attitude, the world would be a better place. So with that, okay, everyone, it's another one in the books. So what I suggest right now is you prepare attitude of gratitude, review the day, plan your day, and project into the future. So I will be at church at 9, at 11, at 5, and who knows where else in between. So go in peace, live long and prosper.